Hello my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/EntitledPeople, where people truly believe that they can do what they want, when they want, because they're special. And in today's episode, guys, we've got trespassing idiots, lunch thieves, Karens attacking off-duty cops. It's wild today. I hope you enjoy the stories, hit subscribe if you haven't, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. So we have a fridge at work, and up to this point, nothing I had in it was stolen. I'm quite new, and others have told me that this was a problem. My food is always really spicy. I love it that way. Anyway, I was sitting at my desk when my coworker comes running out, having a hard time breathing. He then ran into the bathroom and started being sick. It turns out he ate my clearly labeled lunch. A lunch that was also in a cooler lunchbox to keep it cold from work to home, as it's a long drive. Now, there was nothing different about my lunch that day. In fact, it was just leftovers from dinner the night before. Fast forward a day, and my boss comes in asking if I tried to poison this person. Of course, I denied that I had done so. I even took out my current day's lunch and let my boss taste it a bit. And even he was blown away by how spicy it was, even though he only took a small bite. I then proceeded to eat several spoonfuls to prove that I could eat it with no problem. My boss said not to worry, and it was clear to him that I didn't mean any harm and my coworker should not have been eating my food, etc., etc. And I thought the issue was over. But a week later, I get called up to HR for an investigation, claiming that I did in fact try to do harm to this person, and this investigation is still ongoing. Now, what confuses me is there was nothing said about this entitled idiot who tried to steal my lunch. When I brought it up, they said something along the lines of, "We can't prove he stole anything." And I'm confused at this. I thought the proof would be clear since my lunch was gone and the guy almost died from it being too hot. My boss is on my side, but HR seems to be trying to string me up. Their behavior is quite aggressive. Even if my boss backs me up, they just ignore everything he says. On top of this, HR claims that it would be well within said coworker's rights to try and sue me. The way it was said seemed to suggest that they suggested this to him as a course of action. Like, how can someone be caught stealing my lunch and then turn around and say that I was in the wrong? I don't understand it at all. I don't know what to do, and I'm afraid that I'll lose my job over this person, thinking they're entitled to my lunch. Yeah, so this post was just absurd, and honestly, HR seemed like they were acting in such a biased manner here. It's clear who's in the wrong here, like the employee shouldn't be eating someone's lunch, and for OP to get crap for them stealing his lunch and getting sick from it, like I said, is crazy. So OP does come back with an update to the post that says, "I ended up being fired by HR, as she said there was enough of a case to get rid of me before the top boss came back." But that's when I consulted a lawyer who sent a letter to the company informing them that I was considering legal action. The letter contained the reasons for doing so and an account of what happened. 1 week later, I get a call from the owner apologizing and asking me to come back. Both the HR woman and the lunch thief have been let go. He also gave me a very generous raise. I assumed to gloss everything over. I accepted, and now I'm back at work. As much as I hate to go based on office talk, it seemed that the HR woman and the food thief may have been romantically involved. They were seen a lot outside work together, etc., so I assumed it was her protecting him. She may have even believed him and thought I was trying to frame him or something, who knows. I doubt I'll get an answer now. So right now, I'm working in the previous position with almost double my paycheck, so it's a great turnaround. The boss also opened more doors for me by offering different training courses that will be paid for. It's obviously to keep me happy and to stop me from taking any legal action, but what more could I ask for? Something unreasonable happened and it's been more than corrected. I'd have been happy with just having my job back. I just hope I never have to experience this kind of thing again. I really don't have a support group, so I was on the edge of losing my apartment, etc. Guys, I've said this so many times. I will never understand how some people think that they can just eat other people's lunches. And honestly, I'm so glad it worked out for OP in the end. Like, the HR person might have had the title HR, but the action she took made it very clear that she was no way a professional or competent HR practitioner. Like, yeah, ride or die couples, I get it, guys. You love your partner, died with them, but how in the heck did she think that was okay? Okay, like, I know you stole his lunch and it was wrong, but hear me out. Let's just sue him for trying to kill you. Oh, that's not gonna work. Let's just fire him then. So I live in a rural area on a family farm. The farm next to ours was sold to a developer who built a bunch of mini mansions that have an HOA. Now the mini mansions back up to my family farm, and I get letters every week from the HOA complaining about the tractor sitting in the field at the front of my property, where it can be seen on the street, claiming it's an eyesore. We're working that field, and the tractor is necessary. I've had them complain about my barns, my outbuildings, the sound of the large tractors when I'm seeding, and once my grandfather saw some people he didn't recognize checking out the barn, and he went out with his double-barrel 12-gauge to see what they were up to. They were HOA inspectors who declared that they have the right to trespass on our property to inspect the building to make sure it met HOA rules. Now, my grandfather is not politically correct, and I was pleased that he restrained himself from using buckshot to register his opinion of trespassers. And yes, our property is fenced and posted, so they were trespassing. I was then informed by the HOA that they were going to fine me $1,000 a day until the offending striations and the machinery were removed. I informed them that I and my property are not part of the HOA, and if their inspectors set foot on my property again, I would have them arrested or let my grandfather loose with his double barrel. Hearing me say that, they went nuts, and they called the county sheriff's office to have us crazy people arrested. But having lived here for generations, I know the sheriff. He came out and he asked me what's going on, and I told him. He also visited the HOA and heard their demands that he take immediate action to protect their inspectors. They were less than happy when he informed them that since my property's posted and fenced, I was well within my rights to not allow them on my land and that they were indeed trespassing. Also, because of our livestock, a 12-gauge is not unreasonable because of predators. The sheriff also informed them that as I'm not a member of the HOA, I have no requirement to allow them on my land, and if he gets another call, he will arrest the inspectors for criminal trespass. I have since been sent a letter from the HOA's lawyer telling me to cease and desist all operations until they get a court date, because they are suing me for damaging the value of their property. I forwarded that to my lawyer, who, after got done laughing, was amazed. First, because a court has to issue a cease and desist order, and secondly, we've been here farming for 4 generations. I've spoken with the HOA board and told them to leave us alone, or we'll be more than happy to play our lawyer is better than your lawyer. They were also more than a little surprised when I told them that we're currently training the 5th generation to take over, and we have no intention of selling our farm, period. It seems the developer left them with the impression that I was selling my property to be developed like my neighbors, only to make his money and run. God have mercy on overzealous HOAs. Guys, this has got to be the most entitled thing ever. We, as the HOA inspectors, have the right to be on your property. Like, it's funny how they just said that when they have no power at all over OP. As OP isn't even in their crappy little club, yet they kept trying to tell him what to do. And a lot of people are saying in the comments, guys, that OP should get really petty after this and start dousing his property line in manure spray. That'll learn him. And since we're on the topic of HOAs, guys, listen to this next one. So here's a little disclaimer. I did not live in this HOA, but I did live down the street. So we're gonna set the Wayback Machine to circa 2000 on this one. Gas is cheap, cell phones were small, and my Ford Escort got amazing gas mileage. As the now ex-wife and I were struggling with our bills, she decided that the easiest thing for her was for me to get a second job to try to catch up and then get something in savings. So having seen the sign in the window of a local pizza shop that was advertising $12 to $16 an hour for drivers, which was a lie, she badgered me into applying. Fast forward a couple of months, and I've settled into my mind-numbing routine of working 60 to 70 hours a week at 2 jobs. On this particular day, I was scheduled to work on Saturday, which was a hit or miss for tips. You see, our delivery area was very newly rich, but also combined with scattered groups of Florida rednecks. You would have gated communities with McMansions and BMWs right next to a trailer park. Oddly enough, the smaller the house, the cheaper the car, the bigger the tip would be. which factors into the story. On this particular Saturday, the local HOA was throwing a pizza party for residents. I think they were celebrating the last house being sold or something. Anyway, they ordered a ton of pizza, so much so that the manager scheduled extra kitchen staff and had them show up an hour early just for this one order. He even gave them a discount on the pizza since they ordered so much. Now, there were so many pies that it took myself and another driver 2 trips apiece to deliver it all. When we got the last boxes of pizza delivered, the manager writes a check for the total. The total was a few $100s and change, and she proceeded to round up to the next dollar for our tip. She even had the nerve to look at us two and say, "Thanks for your hard work." So with that, I left and went back to the store. The manager asked me how much of a tip I got, to which I replied 87 cents. He didn't believe me, so I showed him the check. He then asked me if I was messing with him and if they gave me a cash tip, and I said nope. And he went off. He walked over to the phone, called the manager of the HOA, and cussed her out for not tipping his drivers after he discounted the pizza. He then told her that he was entering the entire subdivision into the computer as do not deliver. He then hung up, opened the cash register, and gave us each a $20 bill for a tip. And to this day, I have no idea if any of the residents were ever able to order from that store. Now that is one badass boss, guys. Kudos to him for tipping OP and his coworker $20 because 87-cent tip is ridiculous. And it's especially ridiculous when it's followed by "Thanks for your hard work." Like, was that supposed to be sarcasm, or is 87 cents a good tip back in 2000? I'm 26 years old, and I'm a police officer who normally works night shift from 1800 to 0600. On this particular day, I was in a training class. The standard uniform attire for classes are the blue polo shirts with department logo on chest and khaki pants. I had my service weapon and badge on the right side of my hip. My handcuffs, extra magazine, and the radio were on the left side of my hip. So after class ended, I went to my local supermarket that's known for low prices and a blue shirt to get some things for dinner. While I'm there, a kid who looked to be around 9 or 10 years old walks up to me and says, "Hey, are you a police officer?" while pointing at my service weapon. I tell him, "Yes, I am." The kid then says, "I want to be a police officer when I grow up." He says that with so much excitement. When I'm in uniform, I always carry around little plastic badges for when I run into kids. So I stood there for a few minutes talking to the kid while his mother was shopping in the aisle. When they go to leave, I give the kid a plastic badge and say, "Here you go, little buddy. You are now a junior officer." The kid smiled big and he gave me a hug. He was so excited and started saying in a sing-song tune, "I'm a cop, I'm gonna get all the bad guys." So the kid and his mom walk off and I go back to my shopping. I kneel down to look at some chips I'm thinking of getting when I hear someone clearing their throat. I turn to see a Karen who looks to be in her early to mid-40s. The lady glares at me and I go back to looking at the chips, and that's when she says, "Excuse me, are you gonna help me or not? I need to know where the..." I then cut her off and say, "Ma'am, I'm not an employee. You're gonna have to find an employee." At that, Karen says, "Don't you lie to me. You are dressed like an employee. You obviously work here, so serve me." Now keep in mind, I'm not wearing the yellow vest that most employees wear. I'm wearing a blue polo shirt and khakis. So I stand up, turn to her, show her my department logo on my shirt, and point to my badge saying, "Ma'am, I don't work here. I'm an off-duty officer." Now, I don't understand what went through her mind when she said, "Stop lying, and why do you have a gun? You're not supposed to have a gun when working. Where's your manager?" At that, I sigh. I've dealt with many Karens on duty, and I know where this was going. I try to tell her, "Ma'am, I don't work here. My supervisor is Sergeant Dan with Department so-and-so. I do not work at this store." At this point, Karen looks mad, and she stares at me like I'm lying to her. She then yells, "You lying piece of crap. I swear all people your age are just lazy and never want to help anyone. I want your manager right now." So I again inform her that I don't work for the business. I even pull out my credentials, which is a photo identification card of me in uniform with the department name and logo, and has officer under my photo. Now, it should also be noted that I keep my driver's license and my debit card in my credentials since I have to have them on me at all times when I'm in public. It just makes things easier to keep everything together. That's when Karen snatches my credentials out of my hand and she stuffs them into her purse and she says, "These are fake. I'm taking these and showing them to your manager and the real police." I then stop her and say, "Ma'am, you have just committed simple robbery," which in my state is taking anything of value which is in the immediate control of another with force, but not armed with a dangerous weapon. The crime's a felony and punishable by up to 7 years in prison. I then say to her, "Return my credentials now or I will be forced to place you under arrest." Karen then says, "You can't arrest me because you're not a cop. Now go get me the..." It's at that point I remove my radio from my hip and inform the dispatcher that I need units to my location for Signal 65, simple robbery. The dispatcher acknowledges and I hear these units state that they were en route. I then place my radio back on my hip and tell Karen that she's now being placed under arrest. As I go to grab her left wrist, she slaps me with her right hand saying, "Don't you touch me! Help! I'm being attacked!" I then yell at her saying, "You have now committed battery on a police officer. Stop resisting arrest or you will go to the ground." At this point, I notice people are now forming, wondering what's going on. I hear on the radio that units are on scene and asking for my location. I press the radio button and give them my aisle. A few moments later, 3 fully uniformed police officers show up. Officer number 1 asks me what happened, and I give him the rundown while Karen's spewing all sorts of lies of how I threatened her with my gun, how I attacked her, etc. to officer number 2. Officers 1 and 2 stay with us, while Officer 3 goes to the security office to play back the cameras. While waiting on Officer 3, I'm chatting with the other 2 officers. I went through the police academy with one of them, and that's when we hear Officer 3 saying over the radio to the other 2 officers, 1015 Karen, which means to place her in handcuffs and to arrest her. The 2 officers do so, and they're placing her in handcuffs and reading her Miranda rights, and she starts struggling, saying that she's innocent and that they should be arresting me for pretending to be a cop and attacking her, yada yada yada. Officer 1 says, "Lady, we have you on video. You've been lying to us the whole time. You're under arrest for simple robbery, battery on a police officer, disturbing the peace, and now resisting arrest." Officer 2 says, "You have the right to remain silent. I highly suggest you use it." Officer number 3 walks up to us with a copy of the camera footage, and all 3 walk Karen to the back of the first police car. Once everything was said and done, my credentials are returned to me, and Karen's taken to jail, and I go home. I'm never stopping at that business again while wearing my training class uniform. And for those who might want to know about her charges and how much time she can face or jail in prison, I'll put the list below. I'll also add if it's a misdemeanor or a felony. Her first charge was simple robbery, which is a felony, up to 7 years imprisoned. Second charge was battery on a police officer, misdemeanor, 15 days to 6 months imprisoned. Third was disturbing the peace, misdemeanors, up to 90 days imprisoned. And last was resisting arrest, which is a misdemeanor and up to 6 months imprisoned. The lady's looking at 8 years and 90 days imprisoned, but that's the max sentencing. She'll probably get a super low sentence. The DA's office will probably drop the simple robbery charge, and I'll update this in a few months when I hear from the DA's office. Also, the misdemeanor battery of a police officer is due to there being no injury on me. If there was injury on me, she would have been charged with the felony battery of a police officer, which has a sentence of 1 to 5 years. Update. I heard from the DA's office yesterday, and here we go. So the ADA asked if I would drop the simple robbery charge to a misdemeanor theft, which is up to 6 months in jail. Figuring this lady has no previous record, I agreed to it. They also dropped the disturbing the peace charge and the misdemeanor battery of a police officer due to no injuries. I can't really object, but hey, it is what it is, so now she's facing up to a year in jail. The ADA says if she pleads guilty to the charges, she'll get a plea deal, where she'll have to spend a month in jail and the remainder on inactive probation. If she doesn't plead guilty and it goes to trial, she'll have to serve the whole sentence. My money is on her taking the plea deal. Silly, silly Karen, and what a mistake she made that day, guys. I'm also pretty sure the store OP's referring to is Walmart, right? And listen, if a 9-year-old can tell that OP's a police officer and that Karen can't, there's an issue. But of course, we all know Karens, guys. Not even officers are safe from their wrath. I'm a 41-year-old female, and I live with my husband and my daughters who are 10 and 17. My husband is a picky eater, which I've known for about 20 years. I'm used to making food and having my husband and kids making faces, gagging, taking an hour to pick at a single serving, or just outright refusing to eat. My husband is notorious for coming home from work, taking one look at the dinner I've made, and opting for a frozen pizza instead. Most of the meals I make cater to their specific wants, like spaghetti. My husband only eats noodles with a specific brand of tomato sauce with ground beef in it. If I use any other sauce, even homemade sauce, I'm gonna be eating leftovers for a week. So it's just one recipe of spaghetti. These days, my husband complains that we have a lot of the same meals over and over again, which is true. But when I've explained why it's true, it doesn't seem to sink in. I can only make a few things that everyone in the family will eat, and those get old. With that in mind, a couple of days ago, I made a shepherd's pie. I used a new recipe with seasoned ground beef, peas, tomatoes, with a turmeric mashed potato top layer. Predictably, my 10-year-old ate a single bite and then she gagged, and then ended up throwing hers away. My 17-year-old ate a part of the single bowl and then put hers in the trash. My husband took a look at it and he said he wasn't hungry. Now, I was so tired of reactions to my food and putting in the effort for years that it all finally came down on me at once. I burst into tears and cried all night until the next morning. So I told my husband that I was done cooking. From here on out, he would be responsible for evening meals. I would still do breakfast for the girls and lunch when they weren't in school, but otherwise, it was up to him. My husband then said, "Well, what about when I work late?" To which I told him he needed to figure it out. I told him that between him and the girls, I no longer found any joy in cooking or baking. That I hated the way that he and the girls made me feel when they reacted to my food, and that I was sick and tired of the yuck faces and the refusals to eat when I made something new, and that it broke my heart every time. This morning, my husband had to go to work, so he got up early to do some meal prep. He was clearly angry. He said he doesn't understand why I hated him. He also says he doesn't know what to do and thinks I'm being unfair and punishing him. He said I make things that don't appeal to the kids or him, so I should find things that they like. I told him it's hard to make something that everyone likes. For example, when I make Greek-style lemon chicken soup, my 17-year-old enjoyed it, my 10-year-old did, and my husband hated it. I countered and said that I make plenty of chicken nuggets, mac and cheese, grilled cheese, etc., but that picky or not, there is such thing as respect for a person's efforts. So am I the a-hole? Reading this post, I felt so bad for OP, guys, and really, this is beyond picky eating. This is her family acting like entitled a-holes towards her. And the husband should really be setting a better example for his kids, not acting like an entitled brat who won't eat unless it's something yummy that he likes. I wonder where the kids got that from. And I honestly can't believe it took OP this long to be fed up with their behavior. But you guys know the deal. Let me know what you think. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/EntitledPeople. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/malicious compliance episode, where an entitled Karen promotes herself to boss, and she basically destroys the company. Guys, go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.